Sir Roger and the Widow, written by Richard Steele. Richard Steele opens the essay Sir Roger and the Widow by making a reference to a previous essay in which he mentioned a great sorrow which his companion Sir Roger had met with in his youth. In this essay, Steele gives an account of the love life of Sir Roger as accounted by him. Sir Roger disclosed his love affair to Steele in one of his walks with him. He was reminded of his past as they walked along the avenue, as this was the place where he had spent most of his time as a lovelorn young man. Sir Roger fell in love with a widow. He calls her the perverse widow. None has mistreated Sir Roger like this woman. Sir Roger could not pass this avenue without getting a remembrance of her and how severe she treated him. The widow, according to Roger, possessed the most beautiful hand. Roger spent much of his time sitting in this avenue thinking about it. So whenever he passed the place, he got a fond remembrance of her as if he had walked with her along the avenue. The lovesick young Roger carved her name on the bark of several trees in an attempt to give way to his passion, but these methods imprinted her deep into him. Roger fell into long silence. Steele was surprised as Roger had carefully avoided the subject. After a very long pause, he continued speaking about a very important part of his life with a dignity which raised the esteem of Sir Roger in the mind of the author. Steele was able to gain knowledge of the cheerful Roger once he was, that is, before he was affected by a sorrow which had a negative impact on his words and action. Roger began to narrate his past. He came to the estate of his ancestors at his 22nd year and took charge of it. He decided to follow the footsteps of his respectable ancestors who had left him the estate. He followed all the methods of hospitality and had good relationship with his neighbors to maintain his popularity. He spent his time in country sports and recreations to improve his health. In his 23rd year, he was made the sheriff of the county. He was taken on a formal procession, followed by his servants, officers, and the other attendants to the hall where the assizes were held. Roger was tall and well dressed. Wearing a feather in his hat, he mounted on a horse and proceeded towards the courtroom on a procession accompanied by music to attend his first assizes. He was pleased by the way he was admired by the people who looked at him through the windows and standing on their balconies. As he reached his official courtroom, he saw a beautiful woman dressed in widow's clothing. She was a petitioner to have her claims on her husband's property. She was so commanding and had a calm face. She faced the whispers of those who present there with a pretty uneasiness. Sir Roger, captured by her beauty, could not take his eyes off her. He was bewitched when she cast her look on him. He behaved like a captivated being, and in his excitement he foolishly shouted to make way for the defendant's witnesses. All the people from his behavior could understand that Roger too had fallen for her. As long as the case was upon trial, she behaved herself and gave sincere attention to the case. With such an acting, she got the whole court in her favour, and all the arguments put by her rival, the next heir to her husband, were not listened to, and she won the case. Roger calls the widow a perverse woman because she secretly enjoyed the admiration of men, but would never commit herself to anybody. Thus, she had a host of admirers from both the town and the country, and she chose to give attention to them as per her choice, like the changing seasons. She was an educated woman and liked the pleasures of friendship. She was always accompanied by a confidant who knew all her responses to men. The widow depended on the views and ideas expressed by her confidant, which became a hindrance to her love life. Roger points out that the widow had a slight preference for Roger and sometimes had told others that he was the most civilized person in the country. Roger was told that she made this comment to defend Roger when someone made fun of him. Taking this as a sign of special liking for him, Roger dressed himself well and got his horses trained well to impress her on meeting her. After grooming himself and training his horses and training his servants who accompanied him in the manner that suits his position and age, he set out to meet her as a suitor. The widow was both sexually attractive and commanding respect. She could have attained this art by acquiring knowledge, wit, and good sense that excelled even men of merit. She was beautiful beyond the race of women. Even if you don't allow her to capture you with a certain artifice of her eyes, she has other charms to captivate you with admiration. On the whole, she had a dignified appearance, poised movement, complacent manner that made one to hope to win her love, and at the same time her intellectual attainments made one afraid of approaching her. Even the gentlemen of the country appeared like fools before her scholarship. When Roger visited her, he was welcomed with utmost civility, and he found her as if she posed for a picture. She might have learned new methods to charm men. When Roger came towards her, he was awestruck by her appearance and was left without speech. The lady noticed his liking for her and lectured him on love and honor, saying both were pursued by real and fake people. Her speech was as scholarly as the best scholar in Europe. She asked him whether she was happy with his sentiments on these important matters. This left Roger in confusion. Her confidant, noticing his silences, commented that Roger might deliver his opinion on these matters when he wants to speak about it. The lady and her confidant both maintained the expression of a casuist. Roger stayed there for another half an hour and left the place. After that incident, they met frequently by chance, and every time she would speak on some topic which Roger did not understand. This behavior kept him away from her, even though he esteemed her as the most beautiful woman he had ever met. This was how she would deal with all men, and she must be encountered as one would face a riddling sphinx. If she were like common woman, the man who speaks with her would be always happy. She might have somebody in her heart according to the information Roger had got. But Roger consoled himself that everything that was said could not be true. After finishing her conversation with Sir Roger, she adjusted her bosom cloth. Automatically, Roger's eyes went towards her bosom and she cast her eyes down. It was told that the lady sang very well. Her ordinary speech itself was sweet. He dined with her at a public restaurant the day after he had met her for the first time. She helped him with some tansy, and all the eyes of the gentlemen in the country present there were upon him. Roger comments that she had the finest hand of any woman in the world. He now addresses Steele and tells him that if Steele had a chance to meet her, he would have been in the same condition because her speech was music and her appearance was angelic. Roger admits that he becomes abnormal whenever he talks about her, but he consoled himself that she deserved such attention and remembrance, and it would be foolish not to notice such a perfect beauty. He exclaims her as an excellent creature. In his opinion, every woman should imitate her as she is inaccessible to all men. After finishing his account on the widow who won his heart, Roger became emotional and Steele led him to his house where there were other people to join them. Steele found out that the widow is the secret cause of Roger's frequent inconsistent behavior, which was exhibited in some parts of his speech. Steele quotes the famous Roman poet and epigrammatist Martial to explain the condition of Sir Roger. Though Roger tried not to mention the widow, his silence regarding her is eloquent to represent Roger's attempts to keep her identity a secret. Steele ends his paper providing the whole epigram, which reflects the condition of his friend Sir Roger, who, though called the widow he loved perverse, wants to talk about her and still has fond remembrance of her. In Martial's epigram, he describes Rufus' love for Nevia, who talks about her always in spite of what he is doing. I read the epigram Steele ends his essay with. Let Rufus weep, rejoice, stand, sit or walk, still he can nothing but of Nevia talk. Let him eat, drink, ask questions or dispute, still he must speak of Nevia or be mute. He read to his father, ending with this line, I am, my lovely Nevia, ever thine.